Lovely. Right, hi, today we're here with Sally and Stephen, the two S's.
Yeah.
So we'll start from the top. As usually, I've asked you your names. Now, you live here as a couple.
Yeah.
You've got no other family actually living with you at all?
Not here,
No. And you're here full time now, aren't you?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
initially it was a holiday home, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah. Yes, I inherited it 13 years ago, and we moved here permanently almost 6 years now.
Right, yeah, because I think when we came, you'd had it a while, hadn't you? I think.
Yes.
I remember you mentioned your brother. Whereabouts did you come from in the UK?
We lived in Ipswich,
right.
on the east coast.
So actually on the coast. So you got no, or
Not
close
quite.
to
10 miles.
10 miles inland, but we'd been there for about 18, 20 years.
Right.
And before that, we were in Wolverhampton.
Oh, so you moved about it.
Yes.
So, and you are homeowner. You're
Yep.
not renting
We think it's a late 1700s we know it's an old presbytery. What we're not sure about is the exact date. I haven't pinned it down yet. But we think it's late 1700s. And originally it had quite a lot more of the land around it. And then as the village has expanded, one of our predecessors sold off the coach house, which next door on that side.
within this land, sort of there, you mean? Yeah.
Well, over there.
I'll get my bearings.
Side.
Yeah.
And then to somebody who converted it into a house and a garden, and then he sold a couple of plots of land on the upper terrace at the back of the house, and then he appropriated about a third of the garden for himself and built his own house on the other side.
Well, didn't ask.
Oh, it was his land.
Ah, right, okay.
So he had, and that's the point at which once he built that, he sold this to a couple who I think were Parisian, who had it as a holiday home for a number of years, who then sold it to my brother, who then left it via a slightly circuitous route to me.
Right. So do you work here now? Or
No, we're both retired.
No, my French isn't good enough to work.
No.
I'm with you there.
Well, we took early retirement from the NHS. We were both GPs.
Yeah, they're both. I thought one was a GP, one was a surgeon, or just
No,
GPs.
No, we're
Where did
both
I get
GPs.
that from?
Heaven knows. I did minor surgery, but I wouldn't describe myself as a surgeon.
Oh, okay. That's worried.
Well,
Minor
tried it once,
surgery
wouldn't do it again.
little lumps and bumps.
So skin tags,
Yeah.
small things like that. We would.
So you've already said. So you've been here for about 6 years.
Yeah. Yes.
And your viewers know I normally got a bit of paper in front of me, but I'm using Sally's tablet. So, right, regarding the property, we might have already touched on some of these questions. Right, had you visited France before?
Yes, we came when it was probably about 10 years before, about 5 years before we inherited. We've got a boat and we sailed across the channel and had a very wet week in July in Boulogne. And before
Boulogne.
And before that, I hadn't actually been to France at all.
Right.
I'd been on 2 school exchanges in my teens.
That's quite common. A lot of people say they had either the school holiday or just a day break.
And I'd also sailed across in a boat with Sally's brother.
All right.
We took a boat from Bewley River down through the Channel Islands to San Malo with a group of lads from his school, which was entertaining.
And I suppose the fact that St Malo, was that probably the closest you'd say you'd been to where you are now?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
The exchange I did in my teens was to Auxerre in the department of Yonne, which is quite a long way east.
Right.
Here.
Yeah, very
And
good
south
to
of
the
Paris.
east, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I no, obviously I would say what influenced your decision to buy, but you didn't buy.
No.
You inherited it. So
Yes.
it was simpler for you, really, then, wasn't it?
In some respects, yes. In some respects, no, because France had never been on our horizon and plans. Our plan was that when we retired, we'd sail into the Mediterranean.
Ah, right.
And if we ever reached escape velocity from the Mediterranean, maybe go across to the West Indies and the Bahamas.
Oh, it's slightly different then.
Just a
So
little
that's
bit.
not in your plans still? You've thought of abandoned that now?
Well, I think we've decided that sailing across the Atlantic is probably a bit more than we want to do, but it would be nice to get into the Mediterranean. But obviously we're then limited by 90 days in 180.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
so-
when we can sail around France as much as we like, but once we leave French territorial waters...
See, it's complicated
It
so
is.
much, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many people.
There is potentially a loophole so long as we never spend a night on land.
Oh, right, okay.
And that is that the crew of a vessel don't technically enter the EU,
Right.
so long as we don't spend a night on land. The Italian authorities don't go with that, the French do. The other states, I don't know.
It's so annoying though, isn't it? When Brexit's just dashed so many
Yes.
people's plans.
Yes.
Like especially a lot of people that wanted to come here to retire no, retirement's not so bad, but they wanted to come here to live and work and can't do that.
That's
now.
much more difficult.
So you didn't choose the town, you didn't choose it, so it's all, it was
Nope.
just there, and that's
Yep.
you just arrived.
Yes, we got what we got.
So
It could have been a lot
so
worse.
you weren't looking for a renovation project. That is what
No.
you
That's what we inherited.
right?
Yes.
Had you had any experience with renovating the house before?
This is our 4th renovation.
Oh well, at least you had some experience then. Less
Yeah.
daunting,
Yes.
or
No.
No.
But we have an unfinished project in Ipswich behind us.
oh right.
When we inherited, all work sort of more or less stopped on the house in England because we spent all our holidays here.
So
Well, you can't be everywhere, can you?
No.
That's
No.
the problem. No. Yeah. So did you use any artisans for the work, or have you sort of done it yourself?
a mixture. We've used artisans for some work. French wiring is very different to English until you get your head around it. So for that we've used an artisan, and for
That'd be Duncan as one. At
Yes.
least once.
just
Duncan all the time.
times.
Duncan all the time with electrics.
Yeah, that's funny because, say, he gets called the chateau electrician at the moment. The chateau, but
Yes.
yeah, it's,
Yes, he has done a few other bits and pieces.
yes, he has done a few other things.
And then we changed the boiler. We've had the house re-roofed, and all of that's been done by other people. What else? And we've had a new door made. The front door was probably original and falling apart, so
Oh, right.
needed.
It was falling apart.
Yes.
Not
Was the
probably.
original?
No, it was
Front
probably
door.
original, but it was falling apart.
Well, you'd be lucky if they weren't, when they've been here for hundreds of years.
Yes.
So no, I mean, you know, obviously I know you chose English, but have you had French artisans as
Oh
well?
yes, the roof
Oh,
was
right.
done by the roofing company in the village. When we asked around, and we got recommended a number of English roofers, but never the same person twice.
Oh, right.
And when we asked around in the village, it was the same company every time, including Marcel, who used to own this house, and bless him, used to come in and move the buckets. Before we were here permanently, he had
Right.
a key to the house, and he would go up into the loft and move and
That's
empty
brilliant,
the
though,
buckets.
isn't it? It's just
Yes.
stopping it going to ruin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And when we asked him, he said Barbier's, he didn't have them to do the roof on his house when he built it, and he wished he had. Which I thought was...
That's a good recommendation.
A good recommendation.
Yeah, so what was your reasons for choosing either, really? But you've used both, haven't you? So English is obvious.
Yes, ease of communication. We've had plumbing work done by both English and French artisans.
Yes.
And I suppose the thing was with the English artisan was it was a bit distant. He was a bit distant.
In terms of from where he came.
Yeah, so it was a bit more difficult. And we asked around, and eventually we found another English friend who has a business renovating properties, and he recommended a more local artisan who was French, who's always done very good work for him, and as it transpired was probably the cheapest quote anyway.
That's unusual, really, isn't it? Usually people, And so, how did the communication? You was okay with that, or was it all drawings and?
Our French has improved dramatically, and we can just about get by now without needing Google Translate most of the time. But for technical stuff, often it is a question of simplifying language. So rather than saying,
The other thing is he's also happy to communicate via email, which gives you time to translate things.
That's a real bonus. Yes.
He will communicate via email, and in fact it's probably the best way of getting hold of him. If we email him, he'll email back the next day.
No, that's good. Because a lot of the French don't seem to want to do email, do they? They seem to be anti it, in my experience.
I think a lot of them don't use it because it's not polite.
Really?
And it's not the French way of doing things.
Oh no, it's not the French way, definitely not. No, it's difficult, but I think they understand that we need to, because we need to be able to explain ourselves.
Yes.
Because especially when you spend a lot of money, you don't want to be misinterpreted or anything, do you?
No.
Well, actually, it was probably a lot, but there were any problems with the house that you didn't know about? Or?
Well, we knew nothing about the house. The first problem we had when we arrived was we had a removals lorry that was bringing the contents of a 4-bedroomed house in England that my brother had lived in as I wouldn't say a grace and favour. It was
he was a housemaster.
Tied accommodation to his job. So we had a lorry with the contents of a large 4-bedroomed house, and discovered that there was the contents of a 4-bedroomed house here already.
Oh no!
In the flat.
So we had furniture coming out of our ears. So that was the first problem.
Yeah.
Well, the first problem was getting the removals truck through the gates.
Yes.
Which were designed for
very wide,
horse and carriage, not trucks.
And this was a big removals lorry. I'm very impressed that they actually managed it.
Wow, because I thought it was quite narrow when I came through, and I've only got a Twingo. So,
yes.
They did put a fairly large score mark in going out.
Because the lorry wasn't stable, because it didn't have the weight in it.
Yeah, and the ground
drive
slopes away.
is on a camber. Yeah. But so that was one problem. Problem 2 was the roof resembled a sieve. There were about 10 or 12 buckets up there.
Yes.
And that's a big roof for a house, isn't it?
Yeah.
The size,
the heating system at that point was an oil boiler installed in the early 1970s, and was the size of bigger than the downstairs loo is now.
Yeah, it's funny how everything's shrunk, isn't it?
And some of
very inefficient.
Very, very inefficient, and some of the electrics were a little bit dodgy.
So you knew where you had to start then?
Yes.
Yes. Well, the first thing was sorting out the roof and the boiler, because the upstairs electrics were all right. It was mainly heat in the downstairs.
You say all right, but I noticed that Duncan put in a completely new box, and all new work.
Yes.
Didn't try fiddling with the old stuff at all, because
well, it's
I
just
think
dangerous.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. It's not safe. You can't, like you say, it's so different as well. And I think mixing the two is just a bit of a no-no.
Yeah.
Had you conserve budget, or is it sort of ongoing? Or
Well, it's sort of ongoing. Luckily for me, or for us, the roof and the boiler were covered by my brother's death in service benefit.
right?
So we didn't have to face the cost of those, and most of the rest of it has been done. Most of everything else has been done by us, apart from the electrics out of pocket. Yeah, we are lucky that we had good jobs in the UK and have good pensions.
Good pensions, yeah. That will probably come up again later. Right, so you've done the rewiring, done the roof. What about a fossetic?
No, we're on main drains.
Because you're near to the centre of the town,
Yes.
aren't you?
We're on main drains. We've got
Yes.
main drains, fibre optic. We've now got fibre, and it's all the benefits of living in a town without the disadvantages.
Yeah.
The one thing we haven't got here is gas, and to get gas would mean digging up our neighbour's garden, for which there is a right.
We have a right to do so.
Oh, right, okay.
Which was written in when Marcel, who owned this, when he sold the plot of land behind us.
So you're saying obviously the centre of the town has got gas, and you need you talk about connecting to it.
Yes. There's gas runs up the road at the end of the driveway and runs in the road across the back. The road across the back would probably be the shorter route.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there is in ours because it's never been suggested. So we would just have the bottles.
Yeah.
Well, right. Okay.
The old maid did suggest gas to us when she visited in the autumn.
Move on to a different subject, really. About how do you find the cost of living in France?
We were talking about this morning to some friends, and I know everyone says, the cost of food is so much more expensive here, but actually having just come back from the UK, I'm not that sure it is anymore.
Oh, really?
I think sometimes people remember the price. Yeah, I know I'm guilty of remembering the price I used to pay.
Well, you do. You lose touch, don't you? I mean, we go over soon. It's be interesting to see if I notice change.
I think some things are cheaper, but I think the quality is different as well.
Yeah.
And what's much more noticeable is that in England, everything is still wrapped in plastic. The cucumbers are still in plastic.
I thought they were worse here. It just shows you.
The cucumbers are still in plastic. The banana.
Oh, I've seen an orange wrapped in.
The bunches of bananas are still in plastic. I think France has moved further down. Actually,
so they're more ahead with it.
And of course, if you go into some of the bigger supermarkets, most of it's vrac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good to know.
Alexa, turn on standard lamp.
Okay.
I thought she was ignoring you, as does.
Yes.
Do you enjoy French food?
Yes, we haven't eaten out much, and that's because I'm actually gluten intolerant.
There's a complication, yeah.
I mean, we got here, we'd been here a couple of years, and I was quite cautious about eating out. And then COVID hit, so you couldn't. But year before last, when we brought the boat over, I didn't really fancy cooking on the boat all the time.
We were on the boat a month and sailed down from Dunkirk to Pontrier on the northern Brittany coast, and so we ate out quite a lot of the time.
And I found
it was very good.
It was slightly anxiety provoking right at the beginning, but I think because my French was better and I could read a menu better, it was easier. It is difficult. There is nowhere near as much special gluten-free food in the supermarkets in France as there is in England, but then as I never ate ready meals in England, it's not really been a big problem.
No. Does Google enable you to search for things like gluten-free restaurants or anything, does it?
There are apps that you can use, but my experience is that in most places, if you go into a restaurant and say "Je suis allergique à gluten," they will either look at you and hold their hands up in horror,
I was like, oh, yeah.
at which point you say "D'accord," and you walk out and go somewhere else, or they will say "D'accord." And and you sit down, and often someone will come and talk to me about. I mean, I've had the chef come out of the kitchen and talk to me about what he can do.
Well, that's
and
a
what
sign
he
of a
can't
good restaurant,
do.
isn't it? Yeah.
And that's not just big. I mean, I think
It's not just expensive restaurants.
it's not just expensive restaurants.
The
This is the ordinary
workman's lunchtime restaurant.
Yeah.
But the French don't use as much flour in their cooking. They don't. Or as much. They don't fry a lot of breaded stuff.
No, I suppose they don't.
So their sort of cooking is actually much lower in gluten naturally.
I think you're probably safe if you're in like Laval or somewhere like a big town, because they seem to have a lot. It's a bit like going to London, isn't it? They've got such a variety of different restaurants.
Except that when we were sailing, a lot of the places we were in were quite small. And I've eaten out locally several times and had no problem at all.
Oh,
So
good. Because there's going to be people watching this that are going to need to know that. It's the same as on the vegetarian side of things as well.
We even found a creperie in Brittany, where the boat is, that do totally gluten-free.
Wow.
Which is, although most people would think crepes are gluten-free anyway, often the flour is contaminated.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. See, I wouldn't think they were gluten-free because of that. It depends on the flour. Is it Saracen?
Saracen.
That's gluten-free, isn't
it?
Yeah.
That's gluten-free, but the problem is most Saracen flour, if you buy it in the supermarkets, a lot of it may contain, and I'm sensitive enough that I cannot eat that. My daughter can, which is good for her, but not so much fun for me. So eating out Chinese, I can't do in England on the whole, because most soy sauce contains gluten.
Well, I have the same problem here with Chinese. I don't know what someone said what's it called? The
monosodium glutamate.
Yes.
Within about half an hour of eating, I have to run for the toilet, and I never had that in the UK though, strangely enough. So, but then again, it could be something I've developed later.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think there's an element of knowing what's likely to be. So I will look at a menu, and I won't choose in France the pasta unless they have said it's gluten-free, because it's not going to be. So there's a sense of being sensible with what you choose, but also I have found that the French are quite adaptable.
Is it epoutre flour? Isn't that gluten-free?
The what?
Epoutre. I've forgotten what it is in English. But I was told to use it because it's a better flour. It's not bleached, and it's got vitamins and everything in it. So I tend to use a lot of that in my bread and that now. And when I read about it, I thought it said it was gluten-free. And at the weekend,
without knowing what it is in English,
I can't think. What is it? Spelt.
No, spelt. I think does contain some gluten, but it's lower gluten. I'm not sure if spelt flour is gluten free or not.
Okay. But just know it's supposed to be a better flour for you anyway. So I've been using it, and it makes much lighter bread and stuff. Yeah, so I've been trying to find that. And when we was at a Vig Grenouille last weekend, there was a lady there, like you get the artisans selling, and she was selling epoutre pasta. So I had some of that, and it was quite nice. Do you manage when you're cooking, like you say now? Obviously, you do cook at home a lot. Do you have any problems finding the ingredients?
Not on the whole. I cheat ever so slightly. I have a friend who comes over, and she will often contact me before she comes and says, "Is there anything I need?" And because I've been used to cooking with a specific gluten-free flour that I can't get over here, she'll bring me that. Although the alternative is that I go into somewhere like Le Mans and buy go into the Asian food shops, and you can often buy gluten-free flours there, and
Right.
make your own mixes. So a mix of potato flour, chickpea flour, tapioca starch, and there are a number of recipes for
Rice flour.
rice
Do you know,
flour.
I've got a pack of chickpea flour sitting in my sort of flour box at home, and I've not used it. Don't know where to start with it. Do you use it the same way as any other flour?
No.
No.
Oh, right, we'll go. I will look that up then.
It is quite
It's
different.
very heavy.
It's a very heavy flour, and it's very nutty, so it gives quite an interesting texture and taste to things. But if you want to make a cake, I wouldn't, on the whole, use gram flour, which is what chickpea flour is usually sold as. Although I do make a banana bread with it. So
that's heavy in itself usually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've learnt how to substitute with French versions of things then?
On the whole.
Yeah.
And the French do some decent gluten-free pasta. But a lot of things are naturally gluten-free, so rice and...
But probably it's only people like yourselves that would even know that, because you're looking for that. But at least if I needed to know, I know I'd come to it.
And then we import English beer, English ale.
Of course, yeah.
And loose tea.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, actually, I've always had tea bags bought,
Yeah.
and now I've tried to stop using them and have loose tea now. So
We've got some tea bags for
Yes.
use on the boat, but loose tea here. And that's about it. We take French wine to England.
yeah, Duncan had, well, I'd say not always. He had one of his clients just suggest they were going back, and he asked them to bring some John Smiths back. So he's quite happy with those at the moment.
Well, yes.
Just makes a change. Not that we're adverse to the French beers, but so you enjoy cooking. So you're not generally buying in ready-made meals and things.
I mean, I
don't necessarily like the ready-made meals. Do you?
Well, I don't like English ready-made meals. I've never, very rarely, even before I was gluten-free, I've always cooked from first principles.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Even when I was working. Yeah, and had young children.
I'm with you, Dad.
Didn't even feed them tin baby food. Poor things.
I didn't an awful lot, I must admit. Yeah, you just say it's interesting when I'm talking to people. It just reminds me of what I did about cooking and stuff. So obviously, next one would be about: do you find it difficult since Brexit bringing foods back? But obviously, you've just said a friend brings that over. Do you ever go to the overseas section in the supermarket?
Very occasionally.
Not very often.
Yeah.
Occasionally for you like oatcakes, don't you, with your cheese?
Oh
Yes.
right, yeah.
I'm trying to work out how I can make those.
Yeah.
I tend to bring oatcakes from England anyway. They're cheaper and there's no restrictions on them, so not a problem.
God, I can't remember the last time I had an oatcake. What about the English shops that are here, like Elliott's and
Don't think
like that?
I've been into
Haven't used either of them.
No?
No, any of them.
No.
It's not that we've got anything intrinsically against them. It's just we haven't felt the need. I suppose the one thing we do miss is possibly bacon.
Really? Yeah.
However,
You can get bacon here, can't you? But
you can.
It's a different form and quite thin.
Yes.
Or you get a piece of bacon, you have to slice it yourself.
The poitrine, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah. But it's tasty though. I have some.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have a favourite French food or drink?
Well, red wine, cheese, lots of cheese.
More cheese.
More cheese.
This is going to sound really ignorant, but so that doesn't affect non-gluten?
No.
Oh, I always thought it would do.
Well, for a while
Well,
we thought about Rochefort,
Roquefort
which is
is sometimes thought to be not gluten-free
grown
because the
the mould is grown on bread.
Oh.
the inoculant that they inject it with to encode, but not anymore, apparently.
Well, that's good to know.
Most cheese is fine. The only problem is, of course, you can't have the bread to go with it.
So on the occasions we've been out to eat and we know there's going to be cheese, Sally often takes her own bread.
Yeah, I'll either make my
At
own
least you've
bread
got a
or take my own
reason
biscuit.
to. So are you happy eating gluten, or do you have separate meals?
I'm delighted to eat gluten, but I don't often
I mean
get it.
gluten-free. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Gluten-free, bread, I can leave that quite happily.
So can I. Most
It's
of
quite
it.
firm from what
Yes.
I remember, because my like Duncan's nephew, he's very highly gluten intolerant, and when his mum showed us what they could get, I really felt sorry for him.
It's better than it used to be. I mean,
Yeah.
40 years ago, gluten-free bread came in a tin.
Yeah. Commercially,
Yes.
commercial gluten-free bread, I would say, is second only to cardboard.
Well, yes, I can understand that. Yeah.
But I mean, the bread that you make is absolutely fine. Sally's discovered she can make a mix that does very well for pizzas.
Yeah.
And then back in Ipswich, there was a bakery that would do gluten-free bread once a week. Curiously, the owner has come to France to live in retirement. I think she still runs the bakery remotely. But
Is she anywhere near you, though?
no,
Oh, that's a shame.
She's down in the Dordogne.
Oh, I was got
But-
again.
So, no, but
What is it?
Stephen does eat gluten-free, but or Stephen does eat gluten, but it's kept separate, so there's very little gluten in the kitchen.
There's a bread bin over there behind the camera for the poison, as Sally refers to it.
Well, no, that's our son-in-law started that. Yeah. No, if
Well,
I ever
it
go,
is a poison to your body,
if
isn't
I
it?
ever go to their house, and it's a buffet or something, you say, right, poison's at that end.
It's disgusting. Bread is something most people just love, isn't it?
Yes.
And
It's croissants I miss.
really.
Haven't
So
I?
how long have you been allergic then?
15, 17
Oh right, so
years?
it's not been a life thing.
No.
Right. No, obviously not, because you have tried to.
It's something that
croissants.
builds up over time and gets worse and worse if you're continually exposed to it.
Is it one of these things that they say sometimes it's like diabetes, isn't it? The more sugar you have, you end up being diabetic.
Well,
Is
no
it
one-
a similar sort of thing?
No
It's not quite
one
the same.
really knows. There is a genetic predisposition. The Irish, I think, have quite a high rate, and the Italians have a very high rate of gluten intolerance.
Wow.
And it's thought that part of it may be related to the high gluten-containing wheats, and of course the Italians use hard flour, which is high gluten-containing, and in Britain, post-war, a lot of the flour has become hard because they use the short-stemmed wheats.
Right.
And
Didn't
it's
know there was
thought
a
that
difference.
It's very useful for stuff like biscuit making.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, you want that then.
So,
How would you compare the supermarkets here to UK?
much of a muchness. I mean, I shop in Lidl in both places, and some things are identical and other things aren't. I prefer the checkout here. They do not throw everything at you at the end of...
Some of them do. They do,
Well,
but
not in Lidl, they don't. Not in my Lidl, they
Mind you,
don't.
there's supposed to be it's always been, I always remember when we first went to a Lidl in the UK, they were fast with it to get you through fast.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to just throw it in your trolley and then pack
Pack
your
it
bags
separate.
later.
Yeah.
And I think people get stressed because they want to pack it in the bags as it's coming
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
So I've learnt now, I always just throw it in and do it at the car.
But I don't find them much different. I mean,
I think when we first came, Hyper-U was a bit of a revelation, wasn't it? Because the variety of stuff.
just walking into a supermarket and seeing out on display to pick 20 different varieties of tomato.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
not.
amazing, isn't it?
Maybe not 20,
Well, I
but
think it probably was in
certainly
Hyper-U.
more varieties than in the
Tomato, I
UK.
look at it and I think, I just go for the eco one because I think it's a tomato.
But they do have different flavours and different consistencies to them.
You mean in a fresh or in a tin?
In a fresh.
Oh no, I'm talking about tins.
No, I'm talking about fresh.
No.
Yeah, you walk into the supermarket here and what you can't get everything all the time. So you can't get mange tout in the winter. You can't get strawberries in the winter unless it's Christmas or Easter. You have to eat much more seasonally.
Definitely, yeah.
And some things just don't. I mean, until recently, I think the French thought that parsnips were animal feed.
Well, they say that about sweet corn. Yeah.
So there are differences. If you really want something, you can find it if you look hard enough. But I don't find, it's about being adaptable.
Well, usually if it's there and it's out of season, it's been forced, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and green asparagus.
Yes, don't see very often, do you?
Almost never seen in France, except in a jar.
True, yeah.
But we grow it in the garden, so.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I've never tried that. I'll take a cook it. Is it easy to grow?
Yeah.
Oh.
But
Then again, I never really know much how to cook it. I think it's quite simple, isn't it? But
very simple.
I think I tried once and it wasn't very, very nice. It was a bit, I don't know, maybe. But then don't they go a bit stringy?
They can do. So the first thing you have to do is you snap it.
Right.
As low down as it will snap. And if it doesn't snap, it's going to be probably stringy.
Meaning it's too old.
It's a bit too old.
Right.
So you snap it, and then I just steam it for a couple of minutes, or stick it on the top of a pizza, or you can grill it.
I'll have to try it again then, because I steam all my veg actually.
Yeah.
So,
it's a very short-lived season.
Sorry, you were saying, but
so the asparagus season is very short indeed.
It does seem to be, yeah.
Well, it starts here. Well, here for me, the asparagus season started a couple of weeks ago, and convention says you stop picking in the middle of June.
Right.
To let the plants develop some strength for the next year.
So does it just stay in the ground then?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Over winters.
Yes.
Right, because there was a lady selling a lot at a big grenier last weekend actually, and she was doing €6 a kilo. I wouldn't know if that was good or bad.
Right.
But a lot of, I mean,
well, we've grown our own for so long.
You're free.
At this time of year, most of the asparagus you get in France is French. Most of the asparagus you get in England is English. But in England, you can get asparagus out of season, and that would have been shipped from possibly Peru or various places on the other side of the world. And I much prefer the treat of waiting for that first asparagus.
Yeah. Bit like is it Beaujolais, isn't it? Once a year for that.
I grew up near the Vale of Evesham, and there it's known as sparrowgrass in the local vernacular, and they grow an awful lot of it.
Now, the next one I'll be asking is, might not be obvious, how often do you frequent the boulangerie? But obviously,
well, I don't.
Does yours? They're not. So you've not asked there whether they would do a gluten-free.
One of them used to, and I could get it to order, but unfortunately, I didn't eat it that often. And they stopped doing it. I think there might have been another gluten intolerant person locally as well, because the supermarket suddenly started stocking a whole pile of gluten-free stuff, and they don't have as much now as they did. So I'm not sure if it's become,
But you, Stephen, do you find yourself going in and getting a
sneaky
cake? Yeah.
and go and get a baguette from time to time.
Right.
But a baguette then it really lasts me 2 days, So I'll cut it in half, stick it in the freezer.
Yes, that's what
take
we
it out
do.
the following day.
Yeah. Say, what's your favourite purchase? I mean, have you got a favourite cake or anything in the boulangerie?
Not really. I enjoy croissant from time to time.
And I just walk past and sniff.
Well, I do that just purely because I just don't want the calories.
Well, there's that as well.
Yeah, and your family all in the UK generally, And did you get to visit often?
No.
Seems to be the general response.
One daughter's visited here a couple of times. Our other daughter.
Well, she visited when we weren't here before we moved out permanently.
No, the other daughter visited before we were out here permanently. Used it as kind of impressive holiday home.
For her and her mates.
I mean, so no one comes on a regular basis.
No.
I don't know what it is, whether because we're more north.
I think possibly.
It's
but
a shame,
also,
really.
The daughter that came when we weren't here, they've got 2 dogs, and of course now that's much more difficult because she's either got to put them into kennels or she's got to get animal health certificates, which are quite expensive. And it is difficult, but it's I brought the whole point of having children is to get rid of them. Get them to being independent adults and living on their own. And
I haven't seen mine now for must be about 18 months, and I plan to go over in July. But that's sometimes that's about enough. About a week.
We go back fairly frequently. One daughter lives in our house in Ipswich with her partner. Now she's a student radiographer.
Oh right.
So can't actually afford to go anywhere else at the moment. But it's
so the medical profession's in the blood still.
Sort of.
Seems to be.
Sort of. Now, do you have a carte de séjour?
Yes.
I can never say that word.
Carte de séjour Britannique. Oui.
So you haven't got as far as being a French citizen yet?
No. We felt we've been working towards getting better French, and we thought that B1 was within reach, but now that the French are upping the game to B2,
for people watching, they're the gradings of levels to get to in French.
Yeah.
So we're I think if we're going to, we need to get on with it before they change the rules, because I'm not sure that I think B2 is quite a hard level to get.
We would like it to give us freedom of movement. But, and I think we're also atypical in terms of wanting to be able to communicate properly with the French. We have 2 lessons a week with one each with different teachers. Carol and Daphne, and then on top of that, I do aviation French once a week.
Just to add to the difficulties.
Because I have a private pilot's licence and I need to be able to speak French in the air.
Definitely, I'd imagine that's a short... Is it a short language?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Well, I mean...
I'm just thinking like the calls and,
communications are very brief in the air. And I think for a French person in England, it's fairly simple, as it were, because the language is very, very standardised. However, the French are a lot more fluid and a lot more
flexible.
Normal French creeps in.
Right.
And although they all, to fly internationally, they have to have English on their licence. Around the local airfields and with the microlights, they speak a lot of French. Very rapidly, often indistinctly because of the radio, and they drop into normal French rather than aviation French.
Right, so it's a little bit easier for you to understand.
Even the manual of phraseology that's put out by the French DGAC doesn't, strictly speaking, follow the rules of the International Civil Aviation Organisation. And I have taken the exam once to get French on my licence and failed miserably. The first part of the lesson is you have to listen to a recording of what's going on in the air, and then you're given a transcript with blanks and you have to fill in the blanks. At the end of that, it was clear that neither myself nor the other Brit had a clue what the blanks were.
Oh.
And we turned to look at the examiners. It was clear they didn't have a clue either. And so they said, sorry, this was sent to us by Paris, we'll just put it in the bin.
Wow. But you've been persistent, you keep going with it.
I'm still having the lessons.
It's not made you want to give up or anything.
No, I'm still having the lessons, and I think it's within spitting distance. But I'm limited to flying during the hours that there's an AFIS in the tower.
Oh, right.
And therefore, and then can speak in English, because they can speak in English.
What sort of window have you got there then to get out and fly?
8 till 12 and 2 till 6.
So does that seem to go very quick when you're in the air, or is it not too bad?
It's fine, and I haven't flown long distances.
Right.
If I were to buy my own aircraft, if it were British registered, I would have total freedom, even to speak French, using my English licence. But in terms of flying a French registered aircraft in France on my Maltese licence.
Maltese licence?
Yes.
It's complicated to task.
I blame Brexit.
Right, okay.
The Irish weren't accepting state of licence issue changes because they were swamped.
Right.
All those Ryanair pilots.
Yeah.
Oh.
But the Maltese were, and
Bizarre.
since 85% of the Maltese are fluent in English,
It was just an easier process.
So much easier.
When you got your carte de jour though, because we're going back a bit.
Yeah.
Was it complicated for you to actually get that, or was your process quite simple? And
we found that the process, once you'd got your head around, I mean, we had a carte de séjour pretty much as soon as we got here. We applied for them.
oh right, so you got one of the
Pre-Brexit.
short ones. Sort of thing.
Because we became permanent after the Brexit vote, but before the event.
Okay.
So in that gap, and we thought that if we had a carte de séjour, it might make future processes easier.
Well, I think that was the thoughts people were saying, wasn't it? Because once everything's in the system, as it were.
Yes. So the biggest difficulty with getting a carte de séjour, as far as we were concerned, was actually getting the appointment. Going onto the website. Various people say, they release the appointments at
exactly. Get on that time, and I think that's how we did ours once.
Yeah. The exchange to the carte de séjour britannique was very easy. We just filled in the online form, ticked the boxes, sent it off, and I think a couple of months later, our carte de séjour appeared in our postbox.
And what one did they give you?
We've got 5 years because we haven't been here. We'd only been here
2 years. 3 years.
Of course, yes. It used to be 5, didn't it? Before you got anything at all. So they've changed it a little bit.
So we got 5-year cards. So we'll be due renew. So we've now been here 5 years. So we've got permanent rights. But we haven't got the card that reflects that yet because they're not doing replacements yet, and I think who knows what the system will be then.
What you mean, not replacing it before yours has run out?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you actually miss about the UK now living here?
Not a lot.
Easiness of some things. The ease of communication, the ease of getting DIY bits the weekend, even on a Sunday. So you can't just get Screwfix to get something in and plonk up on Sunday afternoon to pick it up.
Whereas I quite like that. I quite like the fact that there is a rhythm to the week, and that there are, on the whole, you can't do anything over lunchtime. You've got
exactly.
to stop.
You're forced to slow down.
Bank holidays are closed. Sundays are closed. I quite like that. I think it makes you slow down a bit and react to the. It's very rare that you really need something that urgently.
You have to think ahead.
Yes.
And it's actually quite nice knowing that you cannot get out on the lawn tractor on a Sunday afternoon.
It sounds like a good excuse to me.
Yes.